1980. The Prologue. In 1980, Henry Emily and his wife Vanessa gave birth to their only two children, Sammy and Charlotte. He was a businessman who ran and managed his own restaurant/entertainment business, Fazbear's Family Diner. He and William Afton, his business partner, became friends after their success with the restaurant. The two became infatuated with their job. Henry would tinker with his toys and gadgets in his workshop, while William would later become inspired by his work, spending less quality time with his family in hopes of making Fazbear's more successful than it already was. He lived with his beautiful wife Clarabelle and his three children, Michael, being the oldest at 14 years old, Elizabeth, and Mike. When Mike was born, Clara encouraged her son to be a role model for his baby brother. He didn't like being told what to do, especially when he didn't want to uphold responsibility. He didn't like children. He didn't like Mike. He saw him as an excuse. He saw him as a liability. He saw him as a waste. He could see it, the emptiness in his eyes. Much like his father, he too was a pathetic, lazy slob who always turned a blind eye to the matter at hand. He even made excuses to his own wife that Mike wasn't their child, telling her the same story over and over again. The baby isn't mine. Disgusted by this, Claire divorced and moved out, never to be heard from again. For 3 years, Henry and William would continue working at the diner, running it into success, until one day. 1983. The beginning. Time worked differently in this universe. Summer lasted from September to November, fall from December to February, winter from March to May, and spring from June to August. Eventually, William would retire from Fazbear's on July 23rd with enough money he made to start his own business, Afton Robotics, LLC. Specializing in robotics and AI engineering, he created his own line of circus-themed animatronics. Built from scratch, these ones were created differently than the spring-lock animatronics at Fazbear's. Spring locks were mechanisms created by Henry to help operate the animatronic characters at the restaurant. Although this saved him a lot of money, this technology wouldn't last, for it would later result in a series of incidents that would shut down the business for good and leave a dent on Henry's reputation. On the other hand, William was planning his debut in the entertainment business. The animatronics he created with state-of-the-art technology and security features to prevent any wrongdoings whatsoever, he would not only plan to open his own restaurant using the characters he created, but he would compete with Fazbear's, ruining the relationship between him and Henry. Following his retirement, it wasn't until Robert Schuyler, one of the employees at Fazbear's, retired as well, and went straight to William with the business proposal. Robert was looking for an opportunity ever since he'd been hired at Fazbear's. Much like William, he too wanted to run and manage his own restaurant alongside Fazbear's. Before his retirement, he wanted to create 2 additional characters that would join Fazbear and Spring Bonnie, the diner's main attraction. These characters were Chica the Chicken and Foxy the Pirate. He pitched the idea to Henry, to which he approved and licensed the characters for the company, but declined to create more animatronic attractions due to the small budget they had. Following in his footsteps, Robert sought out William for the opportunity. Henry, however, would catch on. The two met to make arrangements. After that, Chica's Party World was born. Robert had been the first and only client of Afton Robotics. Alongside his original plan, William would later open Circus Baby's Pizza World to the public a week later. As a part of the deal he and Robert made, he would use the licensed characters alongside William's animatronics, the Fun Time animatronics, and all the income would be shared between the two, despite the fact that Robert was using Henry's licensed characters. It wasn't long until Henry knew about the opening of the 2 new restaurants in town that began to compete with Fazbear's. This led him to question William's motives for leaving his job, as well as their friendship. This was all about to change on the day of the grand opening. William brought 3-year-old Elizabeth and Mike to Circus Baby's Pizza World, letting them explore the restaurant and have a good time. Elizabeth took great interest in Circus Baby, despite her father's multiple warnings to stay away from her. Ignoring this, she interacts with the character. She was literally about to be served ice cream from Circus Baby. Until... What happened next was followed by the screams of panicked customers and a mentally scarred Mike Afton. William lost his first child at the hands of his own creation, and Circus Baby's Pizza World was shut down in one day. When investigated by the local news, William covered up the truth with a fake cover story, saying it was due to gas leaks in the building. Shortly after, he stored away the animatronics into the basement, where no one was ever allowed to enter. He wanted to hide it all away. It was the reminder of his loss to which he didn't want to look back at. He couldn't look back at. However, what no one knew was that in those moments, Elizabeth's spirit would then go on to possess Circus Baby. Out of respect for William's loss, Robert shut down Chica's Party World after only 1 week. He returned the animatronics that were borrowed, and all the money that was earned from both businesses were delivered to Henry. He returned to Fredbear's and explained everything. He was not let go without being briefed on what would change because of recent events. First, with all the money coming in from the late Circus Baby's Pizza World and Chica's Party World, he would use the money to expand his horizons, creating a franchise that would later sell out to the public. This included a TV show, Fredbear and Friends, merchandise based off the restaurant, and even a brand new Fredbear's location called Fredbear Juniors. Then there was the news. Seeing what had happened to William in the debut of his restaurant, he made precautions ensuring something like that would not happen at Fredbear's. Security. With this in mind, he created a brand new animatronic character alongside the rest. Security Puppet. To test the animatronic and its security features, he conducted an experiment. This was something he'd never done before, but it was considered a part of the learning experience for him. For this experiment, he volunteered his 3-year-old daughter, as well as other children who were willing to participate. The experiment was to test the puppet's tracking system, designed to track a designated wristband color and locate the person wearing it. For the puppet, upon successfully locating the individual, will protect him or her from danger. This was a work in progress. What Henry didn't know was that this would be the last time he'd ever see his daughter again, for he was about to suffer the worst of what was to follow for the next several years, and all of it would be delivered from his dear old friend William. William, on the other hand, was defeated. He thought he could manage on his own. He wanted to be successful just like his partner, but it costed him his family, which was already starting to fall apart. Enraged by his failure, he began to lose sanity, becoming overprotective of his 2 children, especially Mike. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. On August 6, 1983, he went out to take a drive on a rainy night and would return with blood on his hands. The same night as the experiment, William found Charlotte outside of Fredbear's in the rain. She was cold. She was scared. She didn't want to be a part of any of this, but her father insisted on it. This jealousy that took over his control and state of being. He had enough. He finally snapped. Charlotte turned around to see the giant man in the distance, obstructing his details under the streetlights. He began to tower over the little girl, Charlotte terrified out of her wits, pounding on the window in the cold rain, begging for the test to be over. But it was too late. She was strangled to death and tossed into the alleyway where her lifeless body could be found. Before he could get away in his purple car, the puppet flew out the door after catching just a glimpse of Charlotte's wristband from earlier. The puppet short-circuited under the rain, but regardless, it edged closer to the body. William sped away before the puppet could reach her just in time. wrapping its arms around her body until it collapsed. When Henry discovered the scene of the crime, he was devastated. He didn't know this would happen. He was turned over by the fact that his former business partner murdered his daughter without any warning or reason. At that very moment, things were set in motion. Henry would track William down and make him pay for his crimes, alongside his daughter, who, under his knowledge, had possessed the security puppet. She wanted vengeance more than anything. She wanted justice. And thus, with their goals in mind, they would set off to pursue their villain. Later that night, William stopped by Fredbear Jr.'s, the new Fredbear location that was opening up soon. He realized how well Henry had been doing for himself, seeing how he was upholding his reputation. He was turned away at the front door due to the recent police investigation involving the death of Charlotte Emily. Junior's was located in a rural suburban area, so it wasn't long before William returned home to find Mike's room locked. After his daughter's death, he became dismissive in his fatherly responsibilities. He became overprotective of his children, keeping Mike locked inside the house so he wouldn't wander off. He knew well enough his older son wouldn't want to look after him, so he ignored the situation. This put Mike in a tight spot. He wouldn't be able to see his friends as often as he used to, and now with Michael having to watch him around the house while Dad was on the run, he began to lose it. He coped with his emotions by watching TV and playing with his toys. He became fascinated with the Fredbear franchise, and he was lucky enough to have his father buy almost all the merchandise for him. However, he wouldn't allow his children anywhere near Fredbears, not wanting them to be associated with William after what he'd done. Of course, he wasn't upfront with his children about this. He couldn't lose their trust. Investigating Mike's room, he ran around back to find a broken window and a trace of footsteps leading to Fredbear's. What was strange was the animal-like footsteps that followed alongside Mike's animatronics. He was baffled. He didn't expect his younger son to defy him, especially at such a young age. He was only 3. Regardless, William would take it a step further by organizing the ultimate punishment for his son. Deep below the underground, in his basement, now Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals, a rental company he whipped up to revive Circus Baby's Pizza World in the future, he created a device called Mirages. Mirages were tiny discs that created optical illusions from an unlimited radius. Utilizing the Funtime animatronics, he created the Nightmare animatronics, twisted, demented versions of the characters from the franchise. This would teach Mike never to leave the house alone again. When he returned, he was grounded for a month. For a young child, it was extreme. But again, he broke his window to escape to that place again. What else was William supposed to do? He modified his favorite Fredbear plush, putting a hidden camera inside its head to watch over him while he was busy. Because it was his birthday next week, August 8th, he was still allowed to go to Fredbear's for his party. After that night, he'd be keeping a very close eye on him. Michael would watch over his little brother and began torturing him in horrible, horrible ways that made him want to lock himself away from the confines of his own home. What he would do was break his toys and wear his foxy mask, scaring him any moment he had. This continued over the following week, leading up to August 13th, Mike's birthday. Michael's constant abuse and pranks kept getting the better of him. He didn't see his friends as often as he used to. Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, Jeremy, and Cassidy. The 6 of them had met each other through Fredbear and Friends, following up to the new location based off of the cartoons and merchandise. This was where the horror began. During the day, Mike endured the pain, shedding tears from his hollowed-out eyes. A psychic friend Fredbear was his only source of comfort. During the night, however, it was 10 times as worse. As the days followed, Mike was greeted by monsters. Monsters that ruined his childhood. Mike was faced with the nightmare animatronics that William would activate each night, putting his younger son to the ultimate test. Mike didn't understand any of this. Bullied by his older brother was enough, but having the characters he once loved now stalking him in the night to kill him? Why? Why was it always that he had to suffer? What did he ever do to deserve this? His mother, his sister, his friends. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. He then began to fear Fredbear's, now the worst place in the world. Remembering how his sister got scooped up by Circus Baby through her stomach, he could see the teeth outlining the jaws on Fredbear's chest. It was a reminder of William's loss he refused to reflect on. It was intentional. Throughout the week, Mike would see a mix of the demented characters he recognized, as well as other characters he never saw before. Surviving each night, he couldn't recover from his daily ordeals every morning. Tomorrow was another day. Nothing mattered anymore. It was just sit and survive till the sun rose. He learned to expect the unexpected and keep his wits about. Often, he'd hallucinate a strange iteration of Fredbear. It was Fredbear, but different. He had an inverted color palette, the black, translucent body with the yellow hat and bow tie. For some reason, it looked familiar. He knew what it was, but he couldn't find out where. Finally, the end of the week came. It was August 13th, Saturday afternoon, back at now the worst place in the world for his birthday party. Fredbear and friends. It was supposed to be a party, but none of his friends came. Except for Michael and his friends, which were just as bad as he was. Throughout the week, he had been bullied and tortured by his brother by day, stalked and pursued by the nightmares by night, and now he was going to die at the place he dreaded to be. He didn't know what Michael had planned this time, as he had his fair share of worser moments here than at home. On his special day, Michael wanted to pull a prank too far. He decided to give him a up-close experience with Fredbear. It was only meant to be a joke, a sick, twisted prank just for laughs and giggles. What happened next ended horribly wrong. Following the tragedy at Fredbear's, Mike was immediately rushed to the hospital where he was now on his deathbed. His birthday had been ruined, but that didn't matter anymore. The whole week leading up to his birthday made him dread the day to come. The location was shut down, and Henry's reputation took another bullet to the chest. William was devastated. His younger son having died at his brother's hands all the more enraged him, but also saddened him. How Michael, at 17 years old, would go this far with picking on his younger brother was beyond him. Or for that matter, beyond anyone. He couldn't be there for his son, but at the same time, he was. Michael brought the Fredbear plushie from home for Mike to have with at the hospital, now making up for his behavior and past antics. Mike's condition was fatal, and he was going to die soon. The doctors couldn't do anything. The damage was done. Michael knew his father would be beyond upset when he returned home, but that didn't matter now. At his side, Michael mustered his apology to his brother, hoping to make up for the brother he couldn't be. Before fading away into darkness, Mike heard a voice he'd never thought he'd hear.
You're broken. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? I'm still here. I will put you back together.
It was Cassidy. It was his friend. He couldn't open his eyes or physically respond to acknowledge her, but he could hear it. He could hear her, and he heard a promise. A promise that his friends were always there for him, no matter where they were. They were always with him. He might not have had his happiest day, but this was the closure he needed. In his mind, he curled up into a ball and cried, as he always had. He streamed tears of happiness on that day, tears of joy. He could die knowing his friends and family were there when he needed them the most. The nightmare was finally over. He could rest in peace. For now. What he didn't know was that it wasn't Cassidy's voice. It was William's. His father was there for him after all, to an extent. He simply used a voice modifier to disguise his voice into tricking his younger son. Now, he was ready for Plan B. Disgusted with his older son's behavior, he would utilize him in his next experiments. But for now, he would wait. It would only be a matter of time until he struck again. As for Henry, he shut down the Fredbear franchise entirely, with a total of 3 incidents surrounding the loss of minors in children's entertainment. He needed to stop and think. Everything led back to square one. It wouldn't be long until Henry had a plan to restart and create a new franchise that would continue its legacy, and the incidents that followed with it. The horror had just begun. (1985) Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. 2 years after the events at Fredbear's, Henry ultimately decided to discontinue the franchise. He couldn't go on with 2 local tragedies affiliated with the brand, and most importantly, himself. He was more than devastated, having lost her daughter to his former business partner, who was now on the run from the law. With no other options left, he decided to use the rest of the original characters for a new franchise, one that would continue towards the 21st century. With its new cast of characters, Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was born. He wasn't going to let anything or anyone get the better of him, including William. With the new franchise and a struggling family, Henry wanted closure more than anything. In his laboratory, he decided to recreate his daughter in the form of a robot. He created 4 different AIs, each compatible with human memories of Henry's daughter, making her almost human. These were called HIs, or Human Artificial Intelligences. Each of the 4 humanoids represented a stage in Charlotte's life: a child, a girl, a young adult, and a woman. He knew it wouldn't bring his daughter back. He knew it wouldn't do him any good but make him grieve. This project was kept a secret. He couldn't let anyone discover what he was working on. Deep down, he was crazy. Just a tiny shred of him. He knew his real daughter was a ghost. She possessed the security puppet since 5 years ago. It was hard to believe at first, for which he refused to believe his daughter was a ghost. But then he kept remembering how, after the police arrived on the scene, on that fateful day, both the puppet and the body were gone. With the first week of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened, everything was running smoothly. It was a small layout with the main and side stage for the main characters and extras, complete with the dining area, arcade, and sidestep attractions. An employees-only room with soundproof doors to prevent any work-related chatter or any possible eavesdropping. Then there were the Springlock suits. The Springlocks weren't out of commission yet, as Henry still had use for them at the new location. He had enough money now than he had before, so with whatever was left of the original technology, it was put to use. However, during the week, one of 2 incidents occurred. First were the deaths of 2 employees from the Springlock suits, which had been equipped for an event at Freddy's. The Springlocks had become loose, crushing the employees from the inside. After the freak accident, Henry officially decommissioned the Springlocks. The technology was simply too dangerous to use anymore, as the suits would be put away and forgotten. Then, on June 26th, William Afton struck again. This time, he stole a Spring Bonnie suit from the establishment to disguise himself as an employee. What he was going to do was track down every single one of Mike's friends and kill them. He lured them, one by one, into the safe room, killing them off, then stuffing their bodies inside the animatronic characters after closing. Susie had been the first victim. She saw everything. He also lured away Michael Brooks, one of Charlie's old friends. A total of 8 losses at Freddy's within their first week, 2 employees, and the missing children's incident. Eventually, William was suspected and arrested in his involvement with the investigation and was taken to court, charged with the disappearances of the missing children at Freddy's. However, he was found not guilty due to lack of evidence, to which the bodies were never found. Afterwards, Henry and Vanessa split up, taking Sammy with her. It was for the best. She couldn't bear the pain Henry was enduring and how all of this was happening around him. They agreed that Sammy would not be a part of any of this. Charlie, on the other hand, was taken into Aunt Jennifer's custody, never hearing from her father again. The court ordered Freddy's to be shut down the week after, leaving it open for 1 more week, with the exception of a night guard position open for everyone to ensure nothing went wrong after its open hours. Henry didn't think of it beforehand, but he agreed, thinking whether or not if he were to open business again in the future. With the company agreeing to this sudden change, they began recommending different employees for the job, until Robert himself decided to fill the slot. Robert was determined to set things right at Freddy's. He felt guilty for his past actions and wanted to live up to it. Little did he know that this would be his last moments alive. Later that night, Charlotte found Freddy's and investigated. She learns of the missing children and everything leading up to Freddy Fazbear's, discovering her killer still at large. She brings the spirits of the missing children back to life. It was a gift, for they could now avenge themselves for their untimely demise. The spirits all mistook Robert for William. They knew whoever killed them worked at Freddy's, and to them, seeing someone all alone after hours looked suspicious enough. Robert manages to survive the week up until July 3rd, where he stayed late one night after his shift and got attacked by Bonnie. Bonnie got dibs, but everyone else was able to maul him before he could escape. That morning, he was reported missing, never to be heard or seen from again. The rest of the day went without incident before Freddy's was shut down for good. Robert found himself to be a ghost, his body stuffed inside one of the animatronic characters in the employees-only room. At first, he didn't realize it, but that was only when he found himself bound to the metallic endoskeleton that he knew something was wrong. After the final scheduled event, Freddy's was cleaned up and the animatronics were taken away for Henry. He wanted to keep them in case he wanted to make use of them again. Robert, on the other hand, escaped. His new body, now an endoskeleton, he didn't know what to do. He goes into hiding. As one tragedy struck Freddy's, another location closed. This was the endless cycle of torture that would repeat for millennia, as Freddy's would reopen in 2 years. Everyone was simply biding their time until the next big thing. And that wouldn't be a long wait. 1987. The Bite. On November 7th, 1987, the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was opened to the public. Freddy's reopened with a bigger location and more of everything. Double the arcade rooms, double the activities and playrooms, more attractions, more reason to be here. Henry took it a step further by installing a security system on all of the new animatronics. This would ensure customer safety, and criminals would be kicked out of the restaurant without delay. What he didn't know was the bodies of the missing children were rotting away inside the old, now withered, animatronics. He kept the old ones at the back of the new location so he could reuse any parts from the characters that he needed. He also didn't know that Charlotte snuck her way in the building. William was also there, using the same old spring Bonnie suit. He lured away 5 more children before Freddy's closed for the day. Teddy, Bonnie, Jay, Maggie, and Luke. That night, William stayed overnight to hide his crimes. Charlotte brought Gabriel to life to accompany her in the investigation. With crank in hand, William took out both Gabe and Charlotte. After the attack, he then stuffed the bodies into the animatronics, cleaned up the mess, and promptly left the building without leaving a trace. The new batch of victims would be introduced to the new routine the originals had been through. The next day, Henry experienced multiple complaints from employees that the animatronics were acting up. It was only the employees that the characters were exhibiting. Hearing this, he opened up a position for the night shift, just like the previous location. Jeremy Fitzgerald is hired for the position, receiving phone calls from Andy Potts as he learns of the tragedies surrounding the company, including the missing children and other strange incidents. Just like last time, the spirits all mistook Jeremy for William. It didn't matter if it was the right guy. They'd kill anyone they saw late at night. Throughout the week, Jeremy learns more about the disappearances, as well as beginning to hallucinate visions of Bonnie and Freddy in a mysterious silhouette. Along with the hallucinations was a mysterious, hollow yellow bear suit that resembled the old, decommissioned Springlock suits. He didn't know that the cause for all of this were the mirages that William had hidden in the office, causing the hallucinations since his first week. He had left a handful of them throughout the building. The suit itself felt different compared to the rest of the animatronics. Sure, it was a suit, but there was something about it that seemed off. It was limp, lifeless, dead. Whenever in its presence, he couldn't help but feel there was more than one person in the room with him, watching him. Ignoring this, Jeremy survives the rest of the week, only for Freddy's having to close down again due to missing children. Having one more event scheduled before closing, Jeremy gets moved to the day shift while the company searched for a replacement. During the last birthday party at Freddy Fazbear's, Jeremy gets bitten by Mangle in an event that comes to be known as the Bite of '87. Jeremy is rushed to the hospital where his motor functions ceased shortly after. Miraculously, he was still alive, but he was paralyzed as a result. His injuries to the frontal lobe damaged his brain's motor function severely. Wanting to be put out of his own misery, he was taken off life support, where he rested easy. Jeremy's final paycheck was delivered to his home address, unaware of his untimely death. Despite this, Freddy's would be open for one more day for maintenance work and to clean out the building. The toy animatronics, all except for Charlotte, were scrapped for malfunctions, and the older models would be reused in hopes of another Freddy's location. There had to be someone else who could watch over the night. Back home, William experimented on Michael. He created a machine where anyone that got incapacitated by it would lose their remnant, their soul, as the Scooper would reserve it for safekeeping. Needless to say, this proved to be a success. He managed to test one of his victims from 2 years earlier, Cassidy, which proved to be a success. Now he was testing it on his son as punishment. This was also a success, as Michael was reborn into a new light. This was done in a process similar to Henry's Charlie experiment, only this time, Michael was given a new body of flesh and machine, now with his own remnant to power it. He was ready to return to Freddy's. He applies for the position under the alias Fritz Smith. This was so he didn't raise any red flags towards his father, as he knew he was still on the run, but also because he was still stalking Freddy's. Michael survives the night, and the following morning he tampers with all the toy animatronics to set the spirits free. He's caught in the act and promptly fired. Michael would begin his journey in undoing his father's handiwork by freeing his friends and ensuring justice would be served. As one Freddy's closed, another one would open. As one Freddy's opened, another incident unfolded. The cycle continued. It wouldn't be long before Freddy's returned again. 1993. The Return to Freddy's. 6 years later, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, for the third time, would reopen with a smaller budget and with a smaller cast, with the older models getting remade for a fresh look. Having been made from the same models, the spirits were still trapped inside. The original missing children lingered on, left on their own. Charlotte had wandered off elsewhere. Henry was keeping his eye out for the puppet. He had plans for her. Aside from Henry, William had lost weight from the multiple spring lock usages. Since the first time he used the suit, he began to wear it more often, growing an attachment to it. Instead of terrorizing Freddy's again, he decided to track down Charlotte, the one responsible for the resurrection of the spirits. He went off the grid. Henry didn't know where and when William would strike next, keeping himself on high alert. He was worried that he didn't prepare enough in advance for such a situation were to occur, or anything for that matter. On November 1st, 1993, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was once again reopened to the public. It was all coming together perfectly. A small budget, small layout, no more suits, no more spring locks, no more missing children or incidents, and for now, no William. Just a quiet reopening at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Deep down, he had his doubts. It wasn't until customers began complaining about a strong odor coming from the animatronics. When investigated by police and health officials, they found a combination of blood and mucus dripping from the eyes and mouths of the characters. Immediately following the incident, Henry was slammed by the health administration for violating several guidelines and was threatened to be shut down by the end of the year because of it. At this point, it was what he expected. With Freddy's being shut down again, he ultimately decided to quit the business and let the company take over, letting them do whatever they wanted to do. Regardless, what was done, as Freddy's was still due to close by year's end. It seemed that no matter what happened, bad luck followed him like a snake in tall grass. It kept getting to him by surprise. William, that slime-balled bastard. The following week, a flyer was sent out in the local paper for a night guard position at the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Michael saw the flyer and wasted no time applying for the job, going under the alias Mike Schmidt, and was given a security logbook to help keep him busy throughout the night. The logbook was an activity book for employees on the job. At first glance, it seemed there was some illegible text written within the pages. It was strange. Throughout the week, Mike receives phone calls from Andy, learning more about the company's past and how the animatronic characters happened to wander during the night. The spirits mistook Michael for William, for they were certain they had finally found their killer and can now plan vengeance. Michael soon realized why this was the case, as he looked identical to his father. He pressed on. Throughout the week, Michael begins hallucinating strange visions of things that weren't really there. Posters, pictures, and flyers hanging on walls where they shouldn't be. The repeated phrase of, "It's me," haunting the hallways. And last of all, the mysterious, limp, lifeless yellow bear suit. He couldn't help but feel very unnerved around him. Him, her, or it, whatever it was. He could feel his tiny beady eyes staring at his soul, accompanied by another presence in the room he couldn't see. The remnant in his body began acting as a magnet, attracting the attention of Cassidy and Mike Afton. The remnant in his body began acting as a magnet, attracting the attention of Cassidy and Mike Afton. Cassidy and Mike both shared the same vessel. Mike would try to communicate to his brother via the logbook with faded ink on the yellowed pages. Often, he'd try to communicate back to him with his red pen, either following along with the activities in the book or trying to illustrate something to help reach his brother. So far, things were going smoothly, until November 11th, where Andy made his last phone call.
Message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did. Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm gonna try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. No.
Mike survives the rest of the week and receives his pay, but ends up returning for 2 more nights to free the spirits of the missing children and to be free from Freddy's once and for all. After the last night he worked the night shift, he tampered with the animatronics once again to ensure the spirit's freedom. Just like the last time, he was caught in the act and was promptly fired. Michael left Freddy's for what would feel like the final time. Unless if there was another flyer in the media, he'd be ready. For now, his work was done. He continued his journey to find his father and get answers as the logbook becomes possessed with Mike's remnant under his knowledge. The end of the year came and went, and by then, Henry had already closed Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for good, leaving the place to rot forever. He didn't care about the franchise anymore. He didn't care about any of it anymore. He couldn't take the pain any longer. He moved away, never to be heard from again, as Freddy's was boarded up and sealed away. It seemed that way until a month later, where William returned. He failed in tracking down Charlotte, so he went back to the old Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the place where he always had fun. He had long since lost himself in his insanity, forgetting everything prior to his disappearance off the grid. But now he was back, ready to do some dirty work. The spirits had been drawn out from rest because of the thing that took their life. They came back because of William. Not because they were waiting, but because their unfinished business was not complete. Now they were back, trapped in their little prison cells that were the animatronic characters. The missing children, along with Charlotte and Michael Brooks, devised a plan. Gabe and Jeremy swapped places with Charlotte and Mike so that William couldn't tell the difference between which children were which. It didn't even matter anyway. They were all his victims. What they were going to do was return a favor. In time, they would return. With axe in hand, William attacked the animatronics one by one, thinking he took out the spirits, only releasing them from their vessels. They cornered him in the safe room, where the only other place he could hide in was his suit. What he forgot was that leaks had begun to form in the ceiling, letting the rain pour into the building. He knew that moisture would apply the spring locks, but he didn't know anything about the leaks until it was too late. He was crushed inside the suit, the locks digging into his skin, beginning to bleed out onto the floor. The pain was unbearable. As the spirits watched him suffer his fate, suffer for everything he did to everyone over the years, they vanished. William lay lifeless and alone on the ground. Everything began to fade to black as he closed his eyes and uttered his last breath. He would be in a coma for what would be a year or two, until Charlie would find out what happened to her father. This was just the beginning of Five Nights at Freddy's.